across the board. All right. So Kirby wants me to eval, so that's what I'll do. He wants me to evaluate his roster and evaluate his football players. That's what I'll do right now. All right, we'll start with the quarterback from what I've seen during the 2 practice availabilities, all right? Carson Beck, and I've said this forever about him, he's so damn clean. He does everything the right way, mechanically, fundamentally, everything is, as fresh and as clean as can be. I want to see, and it's still missing in spurts, I want to see borderline arrogance. I want to see him walk around with that quarterback bravado, because say what you want, it is a real thing. Okay, the best quarterbacks in the world, they know they're the best quarterback in the world, or at least they think they are, right? And they carry themselves with that type of persona. That's something that's still growing with Carson. And we even heard this in Tate Ratledge's press conference and media availability. He talked about how he spoke with Carson about needing to be a lot more vocal and needing to provide his thoughts on things a lot more, because he's a starting quarterback at the University of Georgia. And when you speak as a starting quarterback at the University of Georgia, people will listen. And it sounds like Carson is certainly doing that. A lot of questions about what Gunnar Stockton's going to be, a lot of concerns about the future at the quarterback position, things like that. And even so much so that like people are very hypercritical of Gunnar's throwing motion. Have you guys seen this on social media? Mm-hmm. A lot of quarterback mechanics and quarterback gurus are out here messing with motions and saying that it's a little elongated and it looks like he's really laboring through his motion. And to an extent, I kind of agree with those people, except those people have probably not seen this man throw the football in person. If you go watch Gunnar Stockton throw a football in person, you think he's almost guiding the ball. And if you watch one rep and just watch the motion, you're like, damn, he's guiding the football. He looks like he's trying to place it, okay? And then the next rep, you only watch the ball. You will notice that, yeah, he might be, a little bit fluid and a little slow or whatever through the motion of the ball, but the ball's got immediate life and it is heavy. This is something that I've always said about Gunnar. Gunnar actually established a scouting rule for me about the quarterback position. If I can, I will get in there and catch. Okay, I will catch footballs from that quarterback, because nothing will tell you about the ball of a quarterback more than catching it from him. You catch Gunnar Stockton's football, it feels like you're catching 6 bricks being thrown at you. It is really, really heavy. Okay, it arrives violently and it has natural life to the football, despite the fact, again, that this motion might be something that you guys forever go through these hypercritical evaluations of. And in reality, all that matters is the life of the ball, and Gunnar's got life on his football. Rashada is rail thin, as I told you earlier in the week, or last week during first immediate practice availability. I don't question the arm talent at all, though. He's got all the throws in the book. My question about Rashada is going to be physical limitations when he has to be able to create, or when he has to be able to play outside the playbook. Is his frame, is his lack of horsepower going to be something that limits him there? Now, it's the complete opposite with Puglisi. Puglisi's got all the damn horsepower in the world, but every time we're out there, he just, like, prime example, today, they're running a little whip route, right? Wide receiver works out and then he works back in. It's a timing route. It's also a location ball. Like, you have to put it on the guy's eyes. And hey, buddy, it's not a slant. It's a route where he's working out and then working back in. So his eyes are doing this. This is not a ball that needs to be thrown 100 miles an hour. But yet it's thrown 100 miles an hour on air and the guy takes it off the face and Nitro Tuggle drops the ball. Well, why did Nitro Tuggle drop the ball? Well, Nitro Tuggle dropped the ball because he dropped the ball a good bit today during practice, but Nitro Tuggle also dropped the ball because that ball was a little bit hot for him. And that is kind of going on and on and on with Puglisi, as you would expect with any young player, because the idea of finesse and the idea of playing with, professionalism and moxie's the wrong word, but finesse is the correct word. He lacks that right now because he just doesn't have the reps at it. You can also see his feet die on him. Okay, when he's going through progressions and when there's 4 quarterbacks throwing all 4 balls, you can see his feet stick in the ground instead of remaining right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, like we've always talked about with Carson. That's why his ball's always on time, because his feet are always on time. So there's the quarterback evaluations. I think it's a really, really deep and talented room. You guys have obviously, been paying attention to that all offseason. Nate Frazier was in a non-contact jersey today. Don't know what was ailing him. But I'm going to tell you right now, even with Trevor Etienne in the group, who's an extremely explosive athlete, okay, it's palpable. You can feel it from 90 yards away that Nate Frazier has a different level of juice, a different level of twitch. Like, of all the guys that I've watched at practice and just observed him and observed everybody else, the twitchy of the twitchies, right? The Anthony Evanses of the world, the Arian Smiths of the world, the Trevor Etiennes of the world. Nate Frazier pops immediately. Super excited to see what he does this fall. Branson Robinson, not only based off what we've seen in practice, but what I've heard from intel, it sounds like Branson's returning closer to form now than I thought he would be, maybe even in late September. It sounds like he's going to be peaking come Clemson's matchup. Etienne's still clear-cut the one and is very special. I told you guys earlier in the week during practice observations, it appears to me Roger Robinson has lost a little bit of weight, but it sounds to me like he is still someone that is able to be a bitch to tackle. So that's ideal for what that room needs. They need one of those. Really, they got two of them, Roderick and Branson, and then you have these two electric options in Trevor Etienne and obviously Nate Frazier as well. Chauncey Bowen's doing what freshman running backs do, okay? Normal freshman running backs. I'm expecting, mop-up duty from him. I'm expecting real playing time at some point this year for Nate Frazier. On to the tight end room. I got to be honest. I talked about him in the offseason, and my initial reaction was depth piece. Maybe he plays a meaningful role, but this seems to be a depth piece. That was my initial reactions of Benjamin Urasek. Then you watch the film, you talk to people inside the building about why they took this individual, and it was, hey, stop watching 23, watch 2022. That's more replicable of what we're actually going to get. He wasn't fully healthy last year. I think what they got was a blend of the two. I think because I don't see like a super elite athlete. You could tell that from Brock. You can kind of feel that from guys like Lawson and Oscar. But Urasek is way bigger and way more physically daunting than I thought he was going to be based off Stanford tape. Very, very large target with really, really tough and strong hands. Prime example, they were in the red zone today on air, and it's a back line, tight end pop pass. We're trying to throw it over the linebacker that's running with him, and the coaches are holding bags, and that bag that they were holding was like 4 inches below the goalpost. And Urasek's like catching a ball, getting 2 toes down in the back. It's just a big, big man. And I expected more of like an athletic build, more of like an H type. I think he's a traditional Y. I don't know if that's good news or bad news. That's just my interpretation of him. Now, on to the other guys. Oscar and Lawson are definitely the 1 and the 2 right now, while Urasek is still catching up with things, particularly with the install. But I always felt that high school tight ends that are H's, that are real athletes, that are, primary targets in their offense, the first thing they have to do when they get to college is learn how to block, because you're in the SEC now. So we got to teach you how to block like an SEC tight end. So they spend the first 18 months of their life as a college football player inundated with how to become bigger, faster, stronger, and more technically sound so they can handle their duties on the line of scrimmage. You could see it happen with Oscar. Oscar spent the last 2 years putting on weight and trying to play a Darnell Washington role. Lawson Lucky came into college and it was like, hey, you're 225 pounds. We got to get bigger, and we definitely got to get ready to hold at the point of the attack. So they spent so much time doing that. Now, when I go out and watch them in practice, I see them returning to more of that form where they were route specialists coming out of high school. They were real matchup issues coming out of high school. And because they've been so inundated with becoming better blockers, it's almost like they didn't have time to develop those other skill sets even further because they were already playable. They had to get playable in the blocking areas of things. Well, now that they got the blocking handled, all of the other stuff that made them great prospects, all those other things are getting better. So those things are really good news and nuggets, in my opinion, for that tight end room. They're becoming better weapons after having already developed as blockers. Those are good news things and topics for those rooms. Wide receiver. I think they got 6 names. I expect them to rotate a good bit this year. Now, the starters are the starters. Like, the rotation is the rotation. But I think Georgia at receiver, even last year, there's 5 or 6 names that they play. This week, these 3 might be the starter. Next week, these 3 might be the starter. But these are kind of the 5 or 6 guys that are actually going to be in the rotation. And this year, I think these are the names: Dylan Bell, Arian Smith, Dominic Lovett, Colby Young, Anthony Evans, and Mike Jackson. I think those names have kind of separated themselves in the wide receiver room. And when I go out and watch practice, those are the bodies that I'm kind of drawn to in terms of abilities. Offensive line's done and settled, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, Jared Wilson has been injured and is a little banged up. Based off my not only information but also observations, I think Jared Wilson's fine. I think it's a minor injury. I don't know what it is. I don't want to speculate, but I'll tell you this. He was over there snapping on air today with no massive and noticeable tape job on either ankle. He had his standard knee braces on like every offensive lineman. He didn't have a massive wrist tape job, didn't have a massive shoulder brace on him. I don't know what the injury is, but it was not physically obvious when I saw him today. Whereas Jordan Hall running, it's very obvious his right leg is hurt. With Warren Brinson, it is very obvious that his Achilles is still bothering him. I didn't see an obvious, oh, that's what's hurt on Jared Wilson. I don't think it's a major thing. However, Tate Ratledge, it sounds like, has taken good reps at the center position. And honestly, guys, it happened to them, and Jared certainly needs the reps. And Jared certainly needs the opportunity to practice alongside the guys that he needs to practice with, that he's going to play with against Clemson. However, it's not ideal to have a starting center be banged up this early in camp, but it is ideal in the sense that Tate needed real live reps and as many as possible in case this happens in a real football game. Yeah,
it's ideal because you get reps, and it's also it's ideal in the fact that it's not a serious injury. Like, we don't think this is anything that he's going to have to battle with throughout the season. It's not going to be nagging. It sounds like, hey, it's rest up a few days and you'll be back to normal. Let Tate get these reps now. Let Tate learn the position better while it's still plenty of time to learn the position.
Correct.
Oh, no, it's fine. I got a different question.
What's up?
Oh, so you mentioned Michael Jackson now in the wide receiver rotation when it felt like London Humphreys was going to be in there. Mm-hmm. What kind of happened there, you think?
I think it's just the rotation. Like I said, I think they're messing with us. I mean, I want to take Georgia at verbatim for what they've said about London, which is year 2. And even when Kirby talks about him publicly, he mentions how that's a player with multiple years of eligibility. You know, that's more of he's got 3 years with us. We've got time to develop him and deal with that as it comes. But I think the immediate impact from the transfer portal this year will come from Colby Young and Mike Jackson.
Gotcha.
Jackson is a guy that during the spring was obviously still catching up with install. And since things have kind of been handled with install and since he's become more comfortable, you're starting to see the abilities, come out during practice, and I think I've certainly seen that come out via inside information and intel and people that I'm talking to inside the building, also based off fake rotations that we're seeing at practice.
Yeah, that's another question I have, is that you felt like kind of last year with Rah-Rah, install was kind of a big issue, necessarily also because of the system he came from, where it was a very pass every down. Mm-hmm. Like, we all know the Mike Leach system. Did install seem kind of easier this year? Because they took in a lot of transfer wide receivers. Does it seem like there was less of a learning gap for them? Or is there a way you can even tell that?
It's less of a talking point, but I can't really tell you.
Yeah.
I know Dom caught on to the offense really quickly because there was a lot of similarities between what they did at Georgia and what Missouri did. You mentioned it. What Mike Leach was doing, red 5 and yellow 6, ain't nothing compared to the pro-style system that Georgia has implemented. But no, it sounds to me like the learning process has not dramatically decreased. It has been impacted. But you're also looking at a roster that is much more dependent upon these guys than you were early in the year last year. Going into last year, you look at guys like Ladd and you know Brock's going to be there, and maybe you don't depend upon these guys to be immediate impacts as you require them to be this year, particularly with those year 1 transfers. Any other questions about offensive side of the football?
I had one and I forgot it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Always love that.
Maybe it'll come back to you. All right, on to the defensive side of the football. Offense, like I've always told you, we get real rotational information down there with the offensive line. They're working 5 guys at a time, so you can see the rotation. When they come over to routes on air, you can see who's where. You can see what looks like what. During practice availability on the defensive side of the football, however, it's all indies. So you're just looking at guys like defensive line today was working on hip rolls over on the sled. Like, if you want me to tell you how well Jarrett came off the ball and struck a pad, I can do that. But I'm not wasting my time here on this show doing that for you. However, I will tell you this, okay? With how banged up Georgia is right now going into camp with Warren Brinson and Jordan Hall, and how many overarching questions there are about the interior defensive line, I personally would play Jarrett a lot more this fall than you would maybe normally do, and here's why. This is the deepest and the best I've ever covered Georgia at the defensive end and outside linebacker position. They are so great at defensive end and so deep at outside linebacker that if you have Mykel Williams and Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins on the field at the same time, all you need is one other player on the field that is so goddamn big that he requires a double team. Because if the nose tackle's taken 2, guess what that means? The other 3 guys are one-on-ones. And the other 3 guys are really freaking good this year. So I kind of alluded to this in the Discord chat today about how Jordan Davis got onto the field as a true freshman in 2018, I believe it was, maybe 19. Got onto the field as a true freshman just because he was able to plug. Just go in there and just be big. Make people pay attention to you. Make 2 people put their hands on you. Because if we do that, we have an opportunity to get free and get home and be disruptive elsewhere. But it's not about you. All right. And when you develop and when you get better and when you can run sideline to sideline, then you will become a first-round draft pick. And that's fine. But your first 2 years here, your job is to make everybody else way, way, way better. And I think that's where I would lean. And I haven't seen, John Jarrett play meaningful downs. I just see a really big, violent, tough football player. And he's as big and as tough and as violent as they have on the roster. So if that's the case, I think you're so damn good at inside linebacker. You're so damn good at defensive end and so damn good at jack that everything around those positions can pick up whatever that position doesn't make. But if that position is requiring 2 people to block him, everybody else gets so much better. So that's been my takeaway immediately. My other takeaway is that Nas Stackhouse, I want the arm plan that he was on this past offseason because I ain't never seen so many veins on a 315-pound human. Mm-hmm. Nas Stackhouse looks terrifying right now. Terrifying.
Hell yeah.
Wow. I don't even know if I can picture what that would look like.
I got a photo of it. I got a photo of it from today that I'll find for you.
While you're pulling that up, I guess the question I have is now, obviously you have a guy, size at the 0 spot is super dependent on taking double teams on, things such as that. Do you have a guy that can kind of reset the line of scrimmage right now?
At what position? Defensive tackle?
Yeah.
Ja would be able to do that. Warren is certainly able to do that when healthy. That's Warren Brinson's best ability, is his disruptiveness. It's a matter of consistency for him. Here's this photo of Nas. Let's try not to spill coffee doing it this time today. See if you can zoom in on that.
Good
oh my gosh.
Yeah, buddy. My man is looking violent.
That's crazy.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, so if you want to know, and it's across the board, they have so many large humans inside that defensive tackle room that I think their job this year, and people get way, myself included, get way too caught up in this. Where are the disruptive numbers? Where are the sacks? Where are the TFLs? Buddy, if they can acquire and maintain attention from the offensive line this year, all of the other stuff will be fine. They do not have to make plays this year. They have to draw attention. That's it. That's my feeling. Defensive end, like I said, an edge is the deepest I've seen this unit at the University of Georgia. Mykel Williams, Chaz Chambliss, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Gabe Harris, Damon Wilson. Those 5 names, I, without a doubt right now, would start on any other football team in America. I truly believe that. Sam Mpimba's knocking on the doorsteps of being that. Y'all have 5 really, really, really good football players at those positions. And again, I think that it lessens the burden that's being put on that interior defensive line unit because they're so good out on the edges of this defense and so good at those inside linebacker positions that I think you're going to be fine. Inside linebacker, Jalen was playing or doing indies with the edges today. And I've got some comments from Schumann about Jalen from his presser today that I think were really pertinent and that you guys need to hear. And we'll tell you about that. I love the freshmen at the inside linebacker position. I know I talked about that ad nauseum during the spring. Those guys are just so big and so physically gifted. I just don't think there's any way that they're not great. And especially considering who their coach is. You know what I mean? There's just no way that they're not great. Smile was limited yesterday and is quote unquote on track with his rehab.
Where's the track end?
That's the question, right? I mean, it sounds like he's on track if you consider that the timetable restarted the moment he had surgery.
Right.
If you're looking at this as how long has he been bothered with the foot injury, you have to go all the way back to September of last year. And that's what we classify as a lingering injury. However, if you were to be fair and to restart the timeline at the surgery, he's on track. So that's good news for Georgia at that inside linebacker position.
Does that affect your play style when you've had to deal with a lingering injury for 13 games at that point, and then you have to rehab a season. So he hasn't played a full 100% game, safe to assume that, in over a year at this point. Will you see an effect on the field with that, you think?
I think it would certainly affect you when you're hurt. When you get back, I would imagine you play with a certain sense of confidence. Like, I'm back to myself. You know what I mean? I'm healthy. I feel good. I can go do the things that I've always been able to do. Smile is so physically gifted and so athletically gifted that I would imagine being hampered by an injury was like, I can't get there, when my whole entire life I've been able to get there. I've been able to do that, and now I'm hampered. That's really weird. And then all of a sudden you get back to health and you're back to this, specimen of an athlete, and you can do the things that your mind's always been able to tell you can do. And certainly you haven't even thought about these things while playing. You're naturally just been doing them. Now you're hurt. Now you got to think about all these things and how do I overcome this injury? And it just slows your processes down. I recall a play. It was against Missouri, his first year starting. Tyke Smith is blitzing off the edge at the nickel spot. Smile doesn't even see him. He kind of takes like a hezzy step and and allows Tyke Smith to run across his face. And before his foot can hit the ground again from the hezzy step, Tyke has crossed his face. Now he's back in full stride, and he makes the play on the speed option outside the tackle. Those types of things where his body just did and he didn't think, those types of things were inhibited by this lingering injury. You would assume once he gets back healthy, those things come back to, natural intuition as a football player. Defensive backs, I'm going to tell you, they ain't giving us much. They're not going to give us much during these practice availabilities, except for this. I think it's very clear to me, Dan and Malachi are sure set starters. They take one's reps every single time we're out there. They lead indies. They do everything first on this football team. I would assume Dalen Everett has been vaulted into that guaranteed starter. This is going to be one of our 5 guys in the back end. Outside of that, I think they're at a half answer with Aguero. I think they're still making him compete. Outside of that, I think they're in pretty much open competitions everywhere.
Do you think it's going to be one of these things where it's kind of an open competition throughout the season? And just maybe situationally? Like this guy plays a hard flat better than the deep third?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, where like certain matchups, this guy might be the better option for us. I go back to what they did against Clemson when Clemson was an even bigger opponent and an even tougher matchup in that opening, Duke's Mayo kickoff game back in 2021, where the only real position battle they had at the time was Keely Ringo and Amir Speed. They start Amir Speed in that football game, and second drive, Keely Ringo's in. And then fifth drive, Amir Speed's back in. And then seventh drive, Keely Ringo's back in. And that told me that they were still trying to find out. And if they're still trying to find out in a football game of that magnitude, you would certainly assume they're going to try to find out in a football game of this magnitude.